We start here in Japan, where the government has decided to end a COVID-19 state of emergency for the Tokyo area as scheduled on Sunday. It began in January and was extended twice.
We've carefully examined the situation, including how the healthcare system is strained, and concluded that it meets the criteria for ending the state of emergency. Therefore, today we decided the declaration will be lifted.
Suga said the government will continue to reinforce the medical system while rolling out vaccinations to prevent people from being infected or getting seriously ill. With the decision, the government is changing its basic policy to tackle the virus. It aims to maintain social and economic activities while trying to prevent another rapid rise in infections. Monitoring of coronavirus variants will be stepped up nationwide. Sample screening for mutations will be expanded from the current 5 to 10% of new cases to around 40%. To detect any signs of increase in infections, extensive virus tests will be conducted at elderly care homes and in entertainment districts. The public will continue to be asked to refrain from non-essential outings both during the day and at night. Prefectural governors will monitor local infection trends and request shorter business hours at bars and restaurants. Restrictions on the number of spectators at large events will be eased in stages. Officials say the state of emergency has helped ease the strain on the healthcare system, but some experts are concerned that the number of new cases has stopped declining or in some areas is slowly increasing.
New cases in Tokyo topped 400 yesterday. I'm afraid the number may further increase after the declaration is lifted.
I think it would have been better if we waited another 2 weeks or so.
A restaurant owner expressed his mixed feelings.
It's a small step forward for my business, but the number of new cases is increasing. I wonder if it's best to end the state of emergency now.
Experts monitoring the situation in Tokyo are warning of another wave of infection due partly to variants.
If the flow of people increases in annual events coming up like cherry blossom viewing, farewell and welcome parties, and graduation trips, I'm concerned we could see a rapid spread of infections which may exceed the New Year period.
The governors of Tokyo and the 3 neighboring prefectures are urging residents to stay careful so coronavirus cases don't go back up.
I see the lifting of the state of emergency as a new start in our efforts to prevent a rebound. We shall work with renewed determination.
Across Japan, about 1,500 new infections were reported on Thursday. About half of them were in the Tokyo area. Another high-profile Tokyo Games organizer has resigned over a derogatory remark he made about women. It's just the latest setback for the delayed Olympic and Paralympic Games, which is facing the unprecedented challenge of hosting the world's largest sporting event during a pandemic. Sasaki Hiroshi was the chief creative director for the opening and closing ceremonies. Weekly magazine Bunshun Online reported Wednesday about a chat message Sasaki sent to his team about a year ago. In it, he suggested a popular Japanese comedian, Watanabe Naomi, should dress like a pig at the opening ceremony. Sasaki admitted to it, adding that staff were extremely offended.
The reported comments were inappropriate and deeply regrettable. Since I took office as a chief of the committee, I have been promoting gender equality as a main policy to regain people's trust, and I've tried to swiftly implement it. Such a thing should never happen.
Tokyo Games chief Hashimoto Seiko said that arrangements will be made for choosing Sasaki's successor as soon as possible. She took over after former chief Mori Yoshiro resigned last month after his own sexist remarks. In a statement, Sasaki said his idea and remarks were extremely insulting and irreversible. He went on to apologize to the comedian and to anyone else who was offended by the comment. Watanabe responded with a comment on her agency's website. She said, "It is a fact that my physique has often been referred to and the topic of jokes. I do my job understanding all that, and I am happy how I am." She added she hopes the world can become a place where people respect everyone. South Korean President Moon Jae-in has held talks with the foreign and defense chiefs of the United States. He affirmed that he's committed to working closely toward completely denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. Moon met Thursday with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin.
We see this as an opportunity for us to strengthen and develop our alliance with the United States. Particularly, we'll continue to work together for the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and for permanent peace.
President Biden wanted us to underscore the importance that we attach to the alliance with South Korea and to the work that we are doing together.
Moon has another 14 months in office. He sees his top priority as improving ties between the two Koreas. He hopes to encourage the U.S. to restart its talks with the North as soon as possible. He also appears to want to avoid upsetting China, which is a traditional North Korean ally. The Biden administration has shown it's ready to take a tough stance against China and North Korea through cooperation with South Korea and Japan. India's Prime Minister says his country is entering the second wave of coronavirus infections and has called for stepping up antiviral measures. Narendra Modi held an online meeting with local governors from across India on Wednesday.
We will have to immediately stop the emerging second peak of coronavirus cases, and to do so, we need to take quick and decisive steps.
Modi instructed regional governments to increase their virus testing. He told them to make further efforts to identify infection routes and to encourage more people to get vaccinated. India had nearly 100,000 new cases each day during the previous peak last September. The daily tally fell below 10,000 in early February. But the figure has been rising again, with more than 35,000 new cases reported on Thursday. Some regions are restoring nighttime curfews and other strict measures that had been eased in recent months. Turning now to the latest developments in Myanmar's military takeover and opposition movements. A local human rights NGO, the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, says more than 200 people have been killed since the February 1st coup. It blamed the military for targeting the general public. In the largest city, Yangon, no major protests have been reported in areas where martial law was declared this week. As security forces intensified their violent crackdown on protesters, a body of ousted lawmakers, including members of Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy, released a statement on Wednesday. The group, called CRPH, announced on its own accord that it had removed all ethnic armed groups from the government's list of terrorists and unlawful organizations. A special envoy to the United Nations appointed by the group said the move was aimed at calling on armed groups to cooperate with the people to resist the military.
It is the right thing for us to do that and declare to the people of Myanmar that these groups are freedom fighters. They are defender of the people of their regions and states. So therefore, we are also now open the door for them to come. Let's come together. Let's join our hand together. We have only one common enemy, that is military dictatorships.
Sasa, who the military has charged with treason, also said that concerns are increasing about violent clashes and that active involvement by the international community is strongly encouraged.
We need strong, unified message from Beijing, Seoul, Tokyo, Delhi, Brussels, London, Washington, D.C. We also need this coordinated, targeted, tougher sanction from the international coalitions against this military.
The military has cut off mobile internet service mainly in Yangon. The people are afraid that they'll face growing isolation as communication among them becomes more difficult. Turning back to Japan, a district court has ruled that a nuclear power plant located not far from Tokyo should not be restarted. The Tokai No. 2 plant in Ibaraki Prefecture was suspended after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. The case was brought by a group of residents from Ibaraki and Tokyo against the operator, Japan Atomic Power Company. One point of contention was the question over evacuation plans to be worked out by local governments. The judge said in her decision on Thursday that current plans and the systems to implement them appear inadequate. On the same day, the Hiroshima High Court reversed an injunction order ruling that the No. 3 reactor at the Ikata nuclear power plant in Ehime Prefecture can be restarted. The plant operator, Shikoku Electric Power Company, along with residents of a nearby island, disputed the presence of an active fault near the plant. They also questioned the impact a possible volcanic eruption at Mount Aso, located 130 kilometers from the plant, could have. In his decision, the judge said it cannot be recognized that there's a high possibility for a massive natural disaster to affect the safety of the reactor while in operation. He agreed that the likelihood of an eruption of Mount Aso isn't realistically high. In January last year, the same court, under a different judge, had ordered the plant operator not to restart the reactor. Despite the ruling, the reactor is likely to remain offline for at least 6 more months, as it's expected to take until October to construct the mandatory facilities to ensure safety in the event of emergencies. A former high-ranking Japanese prosecutor is himself facing prosecution. He's in hot water for gambling during the first coronavirus state of emergency. Kurokawa Hiromu used to head the Tokyo High Public Prosecutor's Office. He stepped down last May after he was reprimanded for gambling. He'd played mahjong for money with 2 newspaper reporters and 1 former reporter. The members are said to have exchanged an equivalent of about $90 to $180 in cash at a time. Tokyo District Public Prosecutors decided in July not to indict Kurokawa or the 3 others. Then, in December, a prosecution inquest panel composed of randomly chosen citizens decided Kurokawa should be indicted after all. Prosecutors reviewed the case. They've now brought a summary indictment. If the Tokyo Summary Court decides the prosecution's request is appropriate, it'll order Kurokawa to pay a fine. If he pays it, he will not face trial. Kurokawa is said to be close to the former Abe cabinet. They delayed his retirement last year by altering the conventional interpretation of the law. Critics said the Abe administration wanted to appoint him as the next prosecutor general. Those were the main stories for this hour.
The EU's drugs regulator is shortly to give its verdict on the safety of the AstraZeneca vaccine. It follows a chaotic few weeks that have seen several nations suspend its use over fears of a link to blood clots. As the Afghan government and Taliban meet in Russia, former President Hamid Karzai has told the BBC he welcomes proposals for a new temporary power-sharing agreement, which would include the Taliban. Analysis shows the UK is halfway to meeting the government target of cutting its greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050. The data excludes international aviation and shipping, which is not yet included in the target. And Tanzania is mourning the death of its COVID skeptic President John Magufuli amid rumours he'd contracted the virus. And they're all your latest headlines here on BBC World News.